our second video where I'm interviewing Tasita Small and having a few minutes of frankness on Black Lives Matter. And today we're going to talk about racism and systemic racism. So thank you for joining us, Tasita.
Okay, that's okay.
What's your experience personally and your family's experience of racism?
So it's an interesting one because it's quite a big question. But I do think that my experience is similar to a lot of people in the fact that you are experiencing microaggressions right through to over racism, daily. So it could be a small thing as how you're treated in a shop, maybe profiled in a shop, followed around, questioned, not given information. You might ask for, how much does that cost? They might not answer you, or you might get followed around a shop that's quite, an expensive shop. They might think, well, why are you there? Right through to being stopped by the police, or not being able to have a certain comfortability that someone who is white would have. So it's all the time. It's like a piece of armor that you wear constantly. It's something you think about all the time. In the back, in many interactions you'll have, brush it off sometimes you don't, sometimes you react, sometimes you don't. So that's how I would say I interact with racism on a daily basis, and it plays into my thought process. So for example, if it was my children, I wouldn't allow my children some of the freedoms that white children have, because I fear they'll interact with either people that are racist or institutions that are racist. For example, I don't want my son to be out in the daytime in the park, maybe with his friends, because if in a group of friends, he will most probably be the one that will be stopped. He'll be the one that's questioned in the group because he might be the only black kid or one or two in a group of mixed kids. And so I'm always thinking about front footing. What's the situation going to be? Why would I avoid that? What would I do when I go into it? And it's a lot. It's a lot of thought has to go into absolutely everything. The reverse of that is imagining if you'd never had to do that and never had to think about being unsafe or not being free.
Yeah, I can understand that's really hard. And what about things like, I don't know, holidays or things like that? Does it still play into that?
Everything. So I will always book my holiday thinking, how racist is that country? And that's maybe just going on what they show of themselves on the news or a reputation a certain country may have. But it happens all the time. You're treated very differently again when you go on holiday and you're abroad, especially in countries that are not mainly black countries. So if you're going to maybe the Caribbean, or you're going to parts of Africa, you know that you're going to be treated okay because the majority look like you. When you're going to another country, maybe in Europe, that isn't as cosmopolitan as where we live, and where I live in central London. So I'm faced with a very diverse community. If I go to somewhere that's rural or not as diverse as London, I know that I'm going to come across in some way, shape or form racism, whether it be at the airport, whether it be by the taxi drivers, whether it be by the hotel staff. It happens, and I've had lots of experiences and that shapes where I go on holiday next time. I'll go to places that are friendly for black people. Sounds really bizarre, but there are even sites that help you to find places that are not as racist as others. That's how bizarre this whole situation is. But I'm glad we're having a conversation about it, because these are things that other people do not have to consider.
I absolutely had no idea. So thank you once again for your frankness. In our next video, we're going to be looking at white privilege. So we'll see you then.